In this video we will talk about for block in Angular. For block loops through some collection, and for every element of collection it will render some data here in block. So if we need to repeat some template again and again, but with different data inside, we will use for block. In our example here in code, we will use books array, and each book has ID, title and author property. Let's go in template and use this array here in for loop. A typical for loop syntax looks like this. We have collection here that we will go through element by element. In our case will be books. And in this item, in our case will be book. And that is single element of our collection. And we have this track expression which we will describe a little bit later. So inside block here, we will display data for every book. Which information for this book we can display here in block, we can see in our code. We can display title and author. We want to hide this ID. And we will use here unordered list. And for elements, we will have book, title, and also here author. And let's test this in browser. First run our application ngserve. Okay, let's go in browser. And we can see here we passed through our books collection, and for every book we have displayed title and author. Let's go again in template and talk about this track option. The track option is used to optimize rendering performance by telling Angular how to uniquely identify items in a list. So what track does? Track defines a unique key for each item in the loop. This helps Angular to detect which items changed, avoid re-rendering unchanged DOM elements, improve performance for large and frequently updated lists. In our case, unique key for book will be ID, and we can use it here instead of this $index, book ID. Okay. We need to emphasize here only that index that you saw recently we can use for static collections that never change, and this index tells Angular to track item by its index in the collection. But in our case, because our book is object and we have ID for each book, we can add more books later in collection. Then it is better to track each item using this book.id. So general without track, Angular compares object by reference. If the array is recreated, even with same data, Angular may re-render everything. With track, Angular knows if ID is the same, reuse DOM. If ID is new, create element. Or if ID is removed, remove element. There is also option to track by book. In this case, it uses the book itself as the identity. So Angular will compare books on this way. old book equal new book by reference. In this case, every time when reference is different, object will be recreated. Very often in a real application, array will be copied into another new array with identical data. Then all object references will be changed and Angular will re-render everything. So that is not good always for performances. For our case, definitely this approach with book ID is the best and we will use it. Okay, that is all about track. And in for block, there is also a few variables that can be used here. You need to put semicolon to separate this track and that variables. For example, we can use index from earlier to show index of the current row, and we can store that information in variable index. We can add more than one variables here, only we need to put comma here. And next we will define even variable to tells us whether the current row indexed is even. Next is first, whether the current row is the first row. And to test these things, we will display it here in new list element, index. Also we will print even, and at the end first. And let's try this. Open browser, and here we can see index of row is even row is first row, and for each row we have that informations. It is important to mention that you can use other variables in for block, for example count and last variable, and you can find them all in Angular documentation. So basically that's it for this video. I hope you learned something new. Subscribe, like, and see you in the next video.